Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon. We're going to talk about Marvel Comics. Wow, we actually have 2 comic book videos in 1 week. How about that? We used to talk about comics a lot more on the channel, but you know, the comic book industry is not in a very good place right now. It didn't make a lot of sense to spend a lot of time on it. People just weren't interested in comic book videos, so we started talking more about manga and movies and that sort of thing. So we're going to revisit Marvel Comics because there's been a big shakeup this week. Kevin Feige has been promoted to basically the master of all Marvel. He is in charge of all of Marvel now. Marvel Entertainment and Marvel Studios were historically 2 different things. And Kevin Feige was in charge of the movies, and we had Ike Perlmutter and friends in charge of Marvel Entertainment. Now it looks like Disney is going to consolidate and just put Kevin Feige in charge of everything, and that also kind of means a demotion for Joe Quesada, who's been the creative officer at Marvel for quite some time now. So a very interesting turn of events, not unsurprising at all. Actually, anyone who's listened to the channel for the last year or so would know that, you know, I've been saying for a while that Disney, the way that Disney does business is they, especially now with Q3 being bad and Q4 almost assuredly being bad in the Fox acquisition, is that they like to consolidate redundancies and they like to get rid of underperforming divisions. They also tend to outsource most of their comics. As someone who worked on Disney Comics for over 15 years, I can tell you that other than the Marvel superheroes, all their comics are jobbed out to other publishers. They're all licensees. So, you know, this is a kind of a weird situation that Marvel Comics is in, where they're allowed to still produce their own stuff in-house. And I have to wonder how long that is going to last. I don't know. I think we're going to see a very different Marvel Comics going forward. Everybody's trying to downplay the situation at Marvel now, like, oh, nothing is going to change. It's going to be the same with Kevin Feige in charge, or the opposite. Feige's going to come in and clean house, and things are going to go back to 1995 or 1992, and that's not going to happen either. I think what we're looking at is the first stage of Marvel being massively streamlined, having one Marvel, and Marvel primarily being a movie studio that has licensed comic books created too. And those comic books might not be produced by Marvel Comics in-house. So we're going to talk about that in this video. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants. I think we had 67 or 68,000 subs this week, and we really appreciate the support, guys. Thank you so much for that. We're hoping to hit 100,000. Hoping to hit 100,000 soon. We're trying to get found in the YouTube algorithm, and you know, it's getting harder and harder for independent opinions to get found on YouTube. Every time they make an algorithm change, it does seem like it benefits mainstream media outlets, the CNNs and the Voxes and the New York Times, etc., etc. So if you want independent views, independent voices, subscribe to your favorite channels. Definitely subscribe to your favorite channels. So I want to backpedal a little here. We're going to talk about Kevin Feige. We're going to talk about everybody's hot takes on Kevin Feige. I want to talk about how I've been talking about it for quite some time. In fact, I used to work for a Disney blog, and I guess you would say I was the editor and chief cook and bottle washer along with Geeky. Worked on a Disney blog where I did several articles back in 2017 talking about how Marvel Comics didn't really mesh up with the way that Disney does business. And back then there were problems, and we've been hearing rumors of there being problems and hearing rumors that they were going to clean house, because 2017 was not a good year for Marvel at all. They had a lot of bad press. The comic books were not making money. They're still not really making money. They have occasional hits. And this was a year or two after they had the brilliant idea, and I'm using air quotes, you just can't see it, the brilliant idea of replacing all of the main core characters with, you know, more diverse, younger cast. They replaced everybody pretty much at once with Marvel Now. It did not go well, and then they decided to turn Captain America into the N-word, that rhymes with Yahtzee. They decided they were going to, you know, go that way with him. And that, you know, the Hail Hydra, Captain America storyline, which really rubbed a lot of people the wrong way. And Marvel just was in kind of a tailspin in 2017. They had angry retailers, angry fans. Sales were dropping off. They tried to turn it around. I think they turned it around a little bit, but overall, the comic sales are still down. Comic shops are going out of business. The direct market, the monthly floppy comic market, is not really where it's at right now, unfortunately. And, I'm going to be honest, I don't think it's ever going to come back the way that it was before. I don't think things are ever going to be the way that they were before the the fall of Marvel, basically. I mean, I don't know what else to call it, because if Marvel is unhealthy, the entire comic book industry is unhealthy, and Marvel hasn't been really healthy in quite some time. So of course, the story. Marvel wasn't doing well. YouTubers, independent voices who were not part of the comic journalist cabal were calling shenanigans. And Marvel spent an inordinate amount of time trying to smack these people down. An inordinate amount of time. Like, why do you care? Why do you care what some random YouTuber thinks about your comic books? And the reality is, I think they were trying to make sure that it didn't get out just how colossal the failure was. They didn't want it getting back to Disney, because as I understand it, Disney really wasn't paying much attention to Marvel Comics. They were focused on the movies, they were focused on the theme parks, and Disney usually doesn't pay attention to things unless they have to, because it's such a big company. And Marvel Comics kind of slipped in under the radar. Now, where I think Disney got more directly involved in taking a look at the Marvel Comics situation, beyond the fact that they're looking to cut corners now, they're looking to save money because of Fox and because of having a bad Q3 going into Q4 with Disney Plus and all of this ridiculous debt they have. I think what really put Marvel Comics on the radar was the bad press, because it sort of leaked out from YouTube. It wasn't just the YouTubers that were covering this. And there were a bunch of people who were covering this, but Marvel Comics staff, writers and artists, and Joe Quesada himself zeroed in on a handful of critical YouTubers and made it their mission to pretty much try to get these, smack these guys down. And if they hadn't done that, I think they probably could have, gone under the radar for a little bit longer. But because the backlash and the outrage and the drama spilled out onto Twitter, which spilled out into multiple articles, eventually you had, outlets like The Hollywood Reporter picking it up. When The Hollywood Reporter says Marvel Comics is full of fail, that's when the executives in Burbank take notice. Not long after this, Axel Alonso was fired. He was fired from Marvel. Now, he hasn't said much about it publicly. I don't think he's allowed to. I think he was given a severance package, and he was supposed to keep his mouth shut for X number of months or years. So I don't think he's allowed to say anything. We also saw a lot of unpopular editors and artists and writers get silenced or get gone from Marvel as they tried to basically clean house. They brought in C.B. Cebulski. He was supposed to do, turn things around, and he did. But he was strong at first. He came in and he started cleaning house, canceling low-selling books, canceling a lot of books that fans weren't into, canceling some creators that fans weren't into, and it worked for the first couple of months, and then, some people dug up some dirt on Cebulski. It wasn't even dirt. It was the worst kept secret in comics that he had used a pen name while working in Japan. He'd used a Japanese pen name for his Marvel work because, and I think he's right in this, I don't think the Japanese people would have been too fond of an American working on their stuff. Plus, there was some kind of something that he wasn't technically supposed to write for Marvel Comics while he was an editor there. I forget the details. But once that happened with Cebulski, basically his teeth were pulled out and he's been a lame duck editor ever since. If you're wondering, Sana Amanat absolutely runs Marvel Comics for now. Now, it's going to be really interesting to see what happens with Kevin Feige. Now, I've been saying for quite some time that it's possible that Marvel Comics gets shut down as a comic book publisher, and I still stand by that. I don't think it's going to happen overnight, but I've said before that Disney being Disney, again, Marvel Comics are the only comic books in Disney's entire portfolio that the publisher themselves produces the comics. All of their other comics, Mickey Mouse comics, Donald Duck comics, Disney Fairies comics, literally everything, comics based on movies, they license those comics out because comic books are nothing to Disney. I mean, they really aren't. They generate no real revenue for the company other than being able to strip mine them for story ideas. There's no reason for comics to exist to the Walt Disney Company. It just doesn't make sense. The movies are where it's at. And the movie versions of the Avengers, of these characters, has absolutely supplanted the comic book versions in the minds of the public. So I've been saying for quite some time that I thought Disney would probably pull the plug on Marvel Comics as a comic book publisher, and that the end result would be an office full of brand managers out in Burbank, probably answering to Marvel Studios. I do believe the Kevin Feige move is the first stage. I don't think Marvel Comics is coming to an end just yet, but I think they're getting the pieces, they're moving the pieces on the chessboard for that eventuality, because I think Disney knows that long term there's no financial benefit to publishing monthly comic books when they've got all kinds of reprint material. They're looking more into manga. We've done videos on that. So my personal opinion is that I think that Kevin Feige is being positioned now, and maybe 5 years from now, it might not make sense for Marvel to publish their own stuff, but they'll let IDW or whoever's left, if there's anybody left to even make comic books at that point in the mainstream, to take over, and they would just oversee them at Marvel Studios. Interestingly enough, I wrote a whole bunch of articles, which is sort of what kicked off this channel, for a Disney theme park blog that I was the editor of for years, and you can go out and see those. But unfortunately, they took my name off of all my bylines after they fired me. So I'm not real happy about that. But there are a ton of articles out there that I'd written on this back in 2017, trying to tell people, sound the warning bells, things are going to change at Marvel, because this is not the way that Disney does business. So let's look at the Kevin Feige situation. We'll go out to Comic Book Resources, talk about how it impacts comics and TV. And definitely Feige's in charge of everything. He's also the chief creative officer of all of Marvel, which means that Joe Quesada has basically been demoted. He's basically been demoted. They said he's going to have the same position, but he's just a glorified editor, I think, at this point. He's not the big man at Marvel like he used to be. So coming from Comic Book Resources, big changes for Marvel Entertainment were set in motion earlier today, that would have been yesterday, when it was revealed that Kevin Feige, president of Marvel Studios, is now also Marvel's chief creative officer. Feige now sits at the top of the company alongside Ike Perlmutter. A new report hints at exactly what this shakeup means for Marvel Comics and Marvel Television, as well as the chain of command in general. It has already been revealed that Feige will continue to report directly to Alan Horn and Alan Bergman at Disney. Yeah, Alan Horn is in charge of all of Disney's movies, and Feige got himself taken out from underneath Perlmutter a couple of years ago. He basically, as I understand it, said, you know, the comic book publisher is hindering my ability to get the movies done. They're difficult to work with, and I need to be autonomous. And he is. Feige is. Marvel Studios is basically autonomous under Alan Horn right now. So Dan Buckley remains president of Marvel Entertainment, reports to Feige regarding creative and editorial matters. Moreover, Buckley reports to Perlmutter when it comes to operations, sales, games, and licenses. Finally, all creative executives in the publishing sphere report to Buckley. So Buckley is still in charge, technically. However, new information from comicbook.com suggests that Joe Quesada, former CCO of Marvel, is now the company's executive vice president, creative director. He's been demoted. There's no way to spin this. He's absolutely been demoted. Quesada will continue to be Marvel's creative lead, reporting to Buckley. Additionally, Jeff Loeb, executive vice president of Marvel Television, no longer reports to Buckley and now reports directly to Feige. Jeff Loeb, of course, who was involved in the Netflix shows, so there could be something going on there. That would be interesting if they did bring back Daredevil with the original cast and they rolled them into the MCU proper. In other words, while Loeb, Buckley, and Quesada's roles in Marvel's creative process remain more or less unchanged, I disagree. Quesada's change in title notwithstanding, it's now Feige who oversees just about everything as far as Marvel's creative process is concerned, from comics to movies to television. This could potentially fall in line with previous reports of Feige's Marvel Studios taking over Marvel's television projects. So many moving parts, however, fans will simply have to wait and see all the ramifications this shift in Marvel's status quo will have. I think, just a theory, I think there's going to be a uniform Marvel universe. I think they're going to do to Marvel what Lucasfilm has done to Star Wars. And I could, again, this is just a theory. I could be totally wrong. But Disney is all about brand synergy. I could totally see them, if they're going to continue to publish the comic books themselves or license them out or whatever, I could see them having almost like a Marvel story group that makes sure that the Marvel comics take place in the same basic timeline as the movies, as the TV shows, which effectively ends the 616. Well, they're calling it 616, aren't they? In Spider-Man, they're calling the movie universe 616. So I don't know. That's what I think is probably going to happen. I think we're going to look at a Marvel that looks very, very much like the Lucasfilm story group, and how the comics and the games and all of that are supposed to take place in universe, and they're supposed to be more or less canon. I think we're going to see a Marvel universe in the comics, for however long it lasts, that looks more like the movies and less like the original comic books. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen overnight, but it's going to happen. Because again, Disney doesn't give a shit about your comic books. They don't give a shit about decades of comic book lore. They're going to take from the comics what they want. They'll make a bunch of stuff up wholesale, and to them, the comic books are just ancillary merchandise. No different than a t-shirt, to them. I mean, that's what it is. That's what it is. So Bleeding Cool is kind of like, now they're finally coming around to it. Like, hey, this might not be a good thing. This might not be a good thing. And I don't think it's going to be for comic book fans. I'm going to be honest. I do not think, as much as I can respect Kevin Feige and what he has done in the past with the MCU, this dude's Hollywood. We see what's happening with Phase 4. It's basically Marvel now. And they're going to create brand synergy between the comic books and the movies and the TV shows. I don't think this is going to be good news for fans of Marvel Comics, because comic books are really pretty far down the totem pole for Disney. I'm being honest. So Rich Johnson talks about how there could be an end to the divorce between film and TV comic book creative. I agree with that. I think that's what's going to happen. We've got very sensationalist article here from Jude Terror, who, for the most part, I actually, other than Jude Terror going on a tear against YouTubers, which I could not get behind. A lot, he's been saying a lot of the things that Comics YouTube has been saying for years. In fact, if you want to go there, I would actually call Jude Terror Proto Comicsgate, even though he hates Comicsgate, because he has been sounding the warning bells for several years, and he's actually gotten into it with other comics journalists like Heidi McDonald. I know they had a spat going on there for a while, and Mark Waid was going to punch him in the face or something. But he's correct about the state of the comic book industry, or he has been in the past. So here we go with Jude Terror. It's no secret that Marvel's sales and the sales of the direct market single issue comics in general are in a slump. Yeah, nobody can argue that. Even as graphic novels for young readers outside the direct market and outside of superheroes sell millions of copies. You don't think Disney's paying attention to that? Why are we making superhero comics for a very small audience when we could be making manga or young adult comics or something? Or just stop publishing floppy comics and just make graphic novels for young adults. You don't think they're going to go that way? I think they're going to go that way. It's not a distaste for superheroes that prevents the average person from buying comics because Marvel's own movies rule the box office. You can blame it on any number of factors, including an unreasonable pricing structure. I agree. The insular nature of the direct market. I agree. And its lack of a sustainable way to bring in new customers. Comic shops are folding, and where else are you going to buy them? You're going to go out of your way to find a comic shop that hasn't closed and pay $5, $8 for a comic book that takes like 10 minutes to read. How do you convince someone who isn't a comic book addict that it makes sense to pay $5 to read 1/5 of a story? Yeah, I agree. I agree with this. The fact is, outside of the top 10 highest selling comics in any given month, most of which are tied to some special event and feature numerous variant covers that boost sales without necessarily increasing readers, there's a steep drop off in sales for the rest of the line, with many titles selling less than 20,000 copies. I never thought I'd see a day where most Marvel comics sold under 20,000 copies, and far too many books meeting their demise through early cancellation. Feige is used to winning with Marvel's movies. Will he be happy with selling 30,000 copies of a comic? No. No, he will not. I can tell you, he will not. Marvel's movie universe has several advantages over the comics. They're talking about that. I think what's going to happen, and again, I'm completely convinced what's going to happen is they're going to make the comic book universe the movie universe, or stories based in that universe. I think they're going to streamline the comic book line, and I think eventually they'll probably just job it out to somebody else, because it doesn't make sense to pay the rent and pay the in-house staff and pay when you could just let another company like IDW or Dark Horse or whoever's left standing after the comic book apocalypse, whoever's left standing, Viz, who knows, Viz, let them pay you to license those characters, and then Feige and company oversees those stories from Burbank. You know, maybe they'll just move whatever Marvel staff is worth having to Burbank. That would be my gut on it, just knowing how Disney does business. But I don't know. I mean, nobody knows. I just know from multiple people in firsthand experience that comic books are not important to Disney. It's all about the movies. So we'll see what happens. We'll keep an eye on this on Clownfish TV. Very interesting development. Again, not surprised. Not surprised. And I think after Q4, you're going to see some more things get chopped. I think you are. So we'll talk later. Thinking about printing your own comic books, graphic novel, or manga? We recommend our friends over at Print Ninja. We've been using Print Ninja as long as they've been printing comics, and both the quality and price is excellent. Mention Clownfish TV and get an additional 5% overrun of your book order quantity printed for free. For free! That's free books, people. Just mention this offer on the phone or in the additional information box on the quote request form. That's printninja.com, or click on the link in the description below. Hey guys, thanks for watching Clownfish TV. Please consider supporting the channel. Go to clownfishsupport.com. That's clownfishsupport.com. And if you want to join our community, go to clownfishtalk.com. That's clownfishtalk.com. Please subscribe, ring the bell for notifications. We will talk to you next time.